It was supposed to be another thoughtful family disconnect segment where Ellen explored the challenges of modern family communication, teenagers feeling misunderstood, parents struggling to connect with their kids, the typical generational gaps that every family navigates. These conversations often revealed sweet moments of recognition, gentle misunderstandings that could be bridged with a little humor and heart. But when 17-year-old Marcus Williams stepped up to the family microphone with shoulders that seemed to carry the weight of years of isolation and eyes that held the particular sadness of someone living as a stranger in his own home, Ellen had no idea she was about to witness one of the most devastating examples of emotional distance she'd ever encountered. Marcus's confession would reveal a truth about modern family life that transcended typical teenage angst, the heartbreaking reality of two people sharing a house but living completely separate lives, connected by DNA but divided by everything that actually matters. Marcus stood at the microphone wearing a simple black hoodie and jeans, his dark hair falling slightly into his eyes as if he wanted to hide behind it. At 17, he had the lanky frame of someone still growing into himself, but there was something in his posture, shoulders slightly hunched, hands shoved deep in his pockets, that spoke of someone who had learned not to expect much from the people who were supposed to know him best. Behind his careful composure was a young man who had spent years feeling invisible in his own family, wondering if the distance between him and his father was normal or if something was fundamentally broken in their relationship. "Hi there," Ellen approached Marcus with her characteristic warmth, immediately sensing the weight this teenager was carrying. "What's your name?" "Marcus Williams," he replied, his voice steady but carrying undertones of resignation. "I'm 17, and I have something I need to say about my family." Marcus Williams, 17, that's a big age, lots of changes happening. What's going on with your family that you want to talk about? Ellen expected the usual teenage concerns, feeling misunderstood, parents being too strict, the normal growing pains of adolescence. She was prepared to offer perspective on the temporary nature of teenage parent conflicts. Marcus looked directly into Ellen's eyes, and when he spoke, his words carried a matter-of-fact sadness that was more devastating than anger would have been. "My dad and I live in the same house, eat at the same table sometimes, and pass each other in the hallway every day, but we don't know each other at all, and I don't think he wants to." The words settled into the studio with a weight that surprised everyone listening. This wasn't typical teenage rebellion or drama. This was a young man describing a relationship that had somehow failed to form despite years of proximity. "Marcus," Ellen said softly, moving closer to him, "can you tell me more about what you mean by not knowing each other?" Marcus looked down at his hands, gathering his thoughts. "I'm 17 years old, and I don't know my dad's favorite color, his favorite food, what he wanted to be when he was my age, or what makes him laugh. And he doesn't know any of those things about me either." Ellen felt her heart sink. The simplicity of what Marcus was describing, basic knowledge that should exist between family members, made the absence of connection even more stark. "How long has it been like this, Marcus?" "Always, I think. When I was little, I used to try to talk to him about school or friends or things I was interested in, but he was always busy with work calls or checking emails or watching the news, so I stopped trying." The audience was completely quiet, drawn into this teenager's honest assessment of a relationship that had somehow never developed despite 17 years of shared living space. "Marcus, what does a typical day look like with your dad?" Marcus thought carefully, as if he'd never really analyzed their routine before. "He leaves for work before I wake up. I go to school. He gets home around 7, usually with more work to do. We might eat dinner together, but he's usually on his phone or thinking about something else. He asks how school was. I say fine. He says good, and that's pretty much our entire conversation." Ellen was struck by the mechanical nature of what Marcus was describing. Two people going through the motions of family life without any actual connection. "Have you ever tried to have deeper conversations with him?" "A few times. But it's like we speak different languages. When I try to tell him about things that matter to me, like music or friends or ideas I'm thinking about, he either gives me advice I didn't ask for, or changes the subject to something practical, like grades or chores." Ellen could hear the disappointment in Marcus's voice, the accumulated effect of years of failed attempts at connection. "Marcus, do you think your dad loves you?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment, considering this fundamental question. "I think he loves the idea of having a son. I think he loves me in the way you love someone you're supposed to love, but I don't think he likes me very much, or finds me interesting, or would choose to spend time with me if we weren't related." The honesty of this assessment was heartbreaking. Ellen felt tears forming in her eyes as she recognized the profound loneliness this teenager was experiencing. What makes you feel that way? He knows my grades because the school emails them to him. He knows I play basketball because he has to drive me to practice sometimes. But he doesn't know that I write songs, that I care about environmental issues, that I want to study marine biology, or that I volunteer at the animal shelter every weekend. Ellen stood up and addressed the entire studio. Ladies and gentlemen, Marcus is sharing something that I think happens in more families than we want to admit. He's talking about the difference between living with someone and actually knowing them. Ellen returned to Marcus, sitting down beside his chair. Marcus, does your dad know you're here today? Does he know what you wanted to talk about? Marcus shook his head. He knows I'm here, but he didn't ask what I was going to say. He probably assumes it's something positive about family or school success. What would you want your dad to know about you if he was really listening? Marcus's face lit up for the first time since he'd started talking. I'd want him to know that I write music, not just lyrics, but actual compositions. I'd want him to know that I've been volunteering with rescued animals because I want to be a marine biologist who helps with ocean conservation. I'd want him to know that I think about things deeply, that I have opinions about the world, that I'm not just a kid who needs to be fed and driven places. Ellen was moved by the passion that emerged when Marcus talked about his actual interests and goals. Those are incredible things, Marcus. You sound like a remarkable young man with real purpose. But my dad doesn't know any of it, and I don't know anything real about him either. I don't know what his dreams were when he was 17, what he loves about his work, what he worries about, or what makes him proud. Ellen made a decision that would define this moment. Marcus, is your dad here today? Marcus nodded, pointing toward the audience. He's sitting over there. He came to support me, but he has no idea what I'm about to ask for. What are you about to ask for, Marcus? I want to know my dad, and I want him to know me. I'm 17 in a year I'll be in college, and then maybe it'll be too late to figure out if we can actually have a relationship. Ellen felt the urgency in Marcus's words, a teenager who understood that time was running out for him and his father to find each other. Marcus, would you be willing to start that conversation right here? Would you be willing to ask your dad to really meet you, maybe for the first time? Marcus looked nervous but determined. Yes, I think that's why I came here. I needed somewhere safe to say this out loud. Ellen signaled to her production team, and within moments, they had located Marcus's father in the audience. Ellen could see him immediately, a man in his mid-40s wearing a business suit, clearly having come straight from work, looking concerned and confused about what his son might be discussing on national television. As David Williams made his way down to the stage area, Ellen could see the careful distance he maintained even in this moment, not unkind, but not particularly warm either, like someone who had learned to love dutifully rather than passionately. Mr. Williams, I'm Ellen. Marcus has been sharing some feelings about your relationship, and I think he has something important he wants to say to you. David looked between Ellen and Marcus, clearly trying to assess whether his son was in trouble or upset about something. Is everything okay? Marcus, did something happen? The concern in his voice was genuine, but Ellen noticed it was the kind of concern you might have for any teenager, not the intimate worry of someone who knew this particular teenager deeply. Marcus took a deep breath, looking directly at his father. Dad, everything's okay, but I need to tell you something. We don't know each other. David looked confused. What do you mean? Of course we know each other. You're my son. But Dad, do you know what I care about? Do you know what I think about when I'm not in school? Do you know what I want to do with my life? David paused, and Ellen could see him searching his memory for information about his son that went beyond logistics and responsibilities. Well, you play basketball, and you're good at school. Dad, I quit basketball 3 months ago. I told you, but you were on a conference call. The impact of this revelation was visible on David's face. He had no idea his son had quit a sport that had supposedly been important to him. Marcus continued gently but directly. Dad, I write music. I've been composing songs for 2 years. I volunteer at the animal shelter every weekend. I want to study marine biology and work in ocean conservation. I think about climate change and social justice and what kind of person I want to be. But you don't know any of that about me. Ellen watched as David processed this information, learning about his son's actual interests and passions as if meeting him for the first time. I didn't know you were interested in those things, Marcus. Because we don't talk, Dad. We exchange information about schedules and grades, but we don't talk about who we are as people. Ellen gently intervened. David, Marcus isn't angry with you. He's asking for something. What is it you want, Marcus? I want to know who my dad is when he's not being my parent. I want to know what he dreams about, what he was like when he was 17, what he loves about his work, what scares him, what makes him laugh. David was quiet for a long moment, clearly emotional but struggling to express it. Marcus, I work so hard to provide for you and your mother. I thought being a good father meant making sure you had everything you needed. Dad, I need to know you, that's what I need most. Ellen addressed both of them. David, Marcus is asking for something that might feel scary. He's asking you to be vulnerable with him, to share who you are as a person, not just as a provider. David looked at his son with new eyes, as if seeing him clearly for the first time. Marcus, I didn't realize, I thought teenagers didn't want to spend time with their fathers. I do want to spend time with you, Dad. Real time, not just driving to appointments or discussing my grades. I want to know you. Ellen made a decision that would extend this moment. David, Marcus just shared some pretty important things about himself. What would you like him to know about you? David hesitated, then seemed to make a choice about opening up. Well, when I was your age, I wanted to be a photographer. I used to take pictures of everything. People, nature, cities. I dreamed about traveling the world and documenting different cultures. Marcus leaned forward with genuine interest. Really? You wanted to be a photographer? What happened to that dream? Life happened. Responsibilities, practical concerns. But I still love photography. I take pictures sometimes on business trips, just for myself. Ellen could see the connection beginning to form, two people discovering shared interests they'd never discussed. And Marcus, David continued, I'd like to know about your music. I had no idea you composed songs. What kind of music do you write? Marcus's face lit up. Mostly acoustic stuff, some electronic elements. I write about environmental issues, social justice, things I care about. I'd love to play something for you sometime. I'd like that, David said, and Ellen could hear genuine interest in his voice. Ellen stood up and addressed both father and son. You know what I'm seeing here? Two interesting people who happen to be related but have never taken the time to actually get to know each other as individuals. She walked to center stage. David, Marcus, I want to give you something. I'm going to arrange for you to spend a weekend together, not as father managing son, but as two people getting to know each other. You're going to interview each other about your lives, your dreams, your fears, your interests. Marcus looked excited and nervous. Really? Just talking and getting to know each other? Really? And David, I want you to bring your camera. I want you to show Marcus your photography. And Marcus, I want you to bring your music. Share your passions with each other. David was visibly emotional now. Ellen, I think I've been so focused on being responsible that I forgot to be interested. I forgot that my job as a father isn't just to provide and protect, it's to know and love the actual person my son is becoming. Marcus reached out and touched his father's arm. Dad, you don't have to be perfect. I just want to know who you are. Ellen felt tears in her eyes as she watched this father and son take the first steps toward actually meeting each other. David, Marcus, what you're about to discover is that you've been living with a stranger who might actually become your favorite person to spend time with. As the segment concluded, Ellen hugged both David and Marcus. Embrace that honored both the courage it had taken for Marcus to speak his truth and the vulnerability David had shown in receiving it. 3 weeks later, Ellen received a video from the Williams family. It showed David and Marcus on their weekend together, David teaching Marcus about photography while Marcus played his compositions for his father. The transformation in their body language was remarkable. They sat closer together, made eye contact, laughed easily. The note attached read, Ellen, Marcus was right. We were strangers living in the same house, but now we know each other, and it turns out we actually really like each other. Dad wants to help me record an album, and I'm going to help him start a photography project about environmental conservation. Thank you for helping us find each other. Love, the Williams family, who finally knows what that means. 6 months after the episode aired, Marcus and David had established weekly curiosity conversations, dedicated time to ask each other questions about their thoughts, dreams, fears, and interests. David had reduced his work hours to be more present, and Marcus had opened up about his goals and concerns in ways that surprised them both. Marcus's story became a catalyst for thousands of families to examine their own relationships, proving that proximity doesn't equal connection, that love requires more than provision and protection, it requires genuine interest in who the other person actually is. Because sometimes a 17-year-old's confession about living with a stranger can teach the world that family isn't about sharing space or DNA. It's about choosing to know each other, to be curious about each other's inner worlds, and to bridge the distance that modern life can create between people who should be closest. Marcus and David proved that it's never too late to meet your family members for the first time, to discover that the people you live with might actually be fascinating strangers worth getting to know, and that sometimes the most important conversation you can have is, who are you really?